Now all across North Carolina, it's Carolina Newsmakers. Here's your host, Don Curtis.
Well, hello, everyone. Rick Martinez in for Don Curtis of this edition of Carolina Newsmakers. And it is my pleasure to have as our guest the Treasurer of North Carolina, Dale Folwell. Mr. Treasurer, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. And it's always important because as I go around the state, many people come up to me after listening to Newsmakers show every week. And it's important because you're informing people, not just affirming what they already think about something.
Yeah, and that's important to know in case this is the first or second time that you've heard this show. The purpose of the show is to get newsmakers on and let them tell you your story. This is not necessarily a debate show or a gotcha show. But let's start out with the gotcha question there,
Okay.
Mr. Now, you campaigned on, you wanted to reduce the amount of fees that the pension fund and other investment charges by $100 million over 4 years.
Correct.
So how are you doing on that promise?
We have already fulfilled that promise, actually.
Really?
We have cut fees by over $60 million in the first 6 months. And if you multiply 60 times 4 years, that'd be almost $240 million in fee cuts over that 4-year period, not $100 million.
Yeah.
But we're not through. We're just getting started. And what we're finding is that as we go down this road, that we have a $92 billion defined benefit plan that's called a pension plan, one of the 26 largest pools of public money in the world.
Really?
But on the first floor, we have a $10 billion defined contribution plan, which your listeners will more associate with 401k, 403b, and 457.
Yeah.
We had people who were actually managing money in both plans, but we were not getting the fee reduction associated with the total size of our relationship.
You were getting the quantity discount,
That's
right?
correct.
Yeah.
We are now. I can promise you that. So, all the credit goes to the people in the investment management division who have been alongside us. We have called 175 money managers who manage 370 funds for us.
Wow.
And we ask them 4 basic North Carolina questions. Who are you? Where are you? How good are you? And how much are we paying you? And it's amazing in a 12-minute time set how much information you can get out of that.
And, I'll reveal some personal information is that Treasurer Folwell and I used to work together in Pat McCrory, Governor McCrory's administration. And I can never get your title right. You were basically head of the unemployment department, but there's a fancier name for that, and that is
Assistant Secretary of Commerce.
Okay, and one of your jobs was to North Carolina was in the hole, a little over $2 billion to the feds for unemployment insurance, and that's basically when the recession hit. We had a lot more claims than we were set up to fund. And so we had to go to the feds and borrow money, and we were in the hole by $2 billion.
2.8.
And you cleared that up. How did you clear that up?
Well, thank you for recognizing that. We inherited on March 13th of 2013. Seems like an eternity ago. We inherited one of the most broken unemployment systems in the United States. Not only do we have a huge amount of debt, only behind New York and California. That was the size of the debt of the federal government,
That's
only
right.
behind New York and California. But in addition to that, the result is the SUTA, state unemployment, and FUTA, federal unemployment taxes, that the businesses of this state were paying were higher than 43 other states.
Wow.
Now, your listeners are not going to wake up in the morning thinking about SUTA, FUTA, AAA bond ratings, unfunded liabilities. I've been trying to educate Jason on these subjects for a long period of time, but he's getting there. They wake up thinking about roads and classrooms and criminal justice and all the core functions of state government.
Right.
But attacking and solving these invisible things are important to everything that people wake up thinking about in the morning. So to specifically answer your question, all the credit goes to 3 main sources. One is the businesses of North Carolina that paid off that debt.
That's right.
Because no money came from the General Assembly or from Congress regarding the state's unemployment debt. So all of that money was paid off by the businesses of the state, plus $290 million in interest. And as of now, over that whole 5-year period, there's been a $2 billion surplus built. This is not the rainy day fund that your listeners are accustomed to hearing about.
Yeah.
This is the unemployment fund. So the credit goes to them, the General Assembly that changed the policies, and the hardworking people of our agency who found really great ways to simplify this process and to cut down on wage, fraud, and abuse.
And that's an important thing. The people who work for the citizens and state employees, because when you and I were working together under Governor McCrory, you were always bragging about the quality and the dedication of your employees in the Commerce Department. What are you finding at the Treasurer's Department?
I'm finding a lot of the same thing. And, at the Treasurer's Office, we are the keeper of the public purse. Harlan Bowles, who was considered the best state treasurer of the 20th century, North Carolina's 26th treasurer, 25th, Harlan Bowles states in his book, The Keeper of the Public Purse, written by Charles Heatherly, that the state treasurer has more constitutional and statutory responsibilities and duties than any other elected official in the state, except for the governor. I'm sure he said except for the governor. Governor has command of the National Guard.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not trying to draw attention to myself or previous treasurers. I'm trying to tell your listeners that the treasurer manages $110 billion. That is 5 times larger than the state budget. So we're in a unique situation, unlike anywhere else in the state or maybe the country, where when we succeed at the treasurer's office, the governor's office succeeds, the legislature succeeds. When we fail, they all fail because of the enormity of $110 billion that we manage, which is the health care, the pension, and many of the other responsibilities. So my reason for telling your listeners that is that, as a fireman told me one time, there are no Democrat and Republican fires. They're just fires. And there's no Democrat or Republican money at the treasurer's office. It's all green.
Yeah, it's all ours.
And we're the keepers of the public purse and finding a lot of great, hardworking employees over there.
All right. Well, that's good to know, and I'd like our listeners to know that, because that was also what's basically anybody's experience who works from the state, who comes from the outside. You just about leave in admiration of a lot of state workers that they're the butt of a lot of jokes, but in reality, you got a lot of dedicated people working for their fellow citizens. Now, of that $110 billion that you manage, I would assume that the largest is the pension fund. How's that doing, and how big is it these days?
The pension plan just hit a all-time valuation high of a little over $94 billion. In the last fiscal year that just ended on June 30th, it reported a 10.6% return, which was almost $10 billion in earnings.
Wow.
Now, the reason that's important is that out of the pension plans, we're paying out $500 million a month every 30 days out of that building.
Oh,
that's
really?
$6 billion a year. And because of life expectancies and people retiring, that's going to be going to $9 billion over the next several years. So not only that, but going back to the fee question, we've been able to reduce fees. The fees that this pension plan was paying have gone from $50 million to $600 million over the last 15 years.
Wow.
The fees.
Wow. $600 million in fees we were paying?
Per year.
Wow.
And so that's why, as keepers of the public purse, we're trying to make things simpler, build value, and make them more sustainable for the future. So the pension plan's in good shape. Obviously, we have huge headwinds facing us with low interest rates, the blessed event of increased life expectancies. By the way, it doesn't apply to anybody in this room because the life expectancies of males are actually going down in North Carolina for the last 2 years, actually, and the life expectancies of females is actually going up. So that's going to make half your listeners very happy.
Yeah, I was about
today.
to say you're about to please half your folks.
Including your wife.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay. Well, now that is, we keep hearing that other states like Illinois and others are in trouble because of their pension funds. You just said how much is coming in, how much is going out. Are we in good shape or decent shape? Or
we have one of the best funded pension plans in the United States, but we're assuming that we're going to earn 7.2% rate of return. We have not achieved that on average this century.
Wow.
We've had years like this year we reported 10.6,
Yeah.
but the year before we reported 1. But we had to average 7.2.
Mm-hmm.
So on average, we have one of the most secure and safest pension plans in the United States. But our retirees for the state, they cannot pay their Duke Power bill with relativity. they have to pay it with cash. So it doesn't matter how you compare to somebody else. Our retirees need cash.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of the best funded. Now, you don't have to talk about Illinois. South Carolina pension plan is less than 60% funded today.
Ooh.
Some of the plans in Kentucky are 16% funded. We are in the high 80s, low 90% funded pension plan. So we're one of the best funded pension plans in the United States. But when you look at the sustainability factor, it's very important of how we're going to deal with this over the next 5, 10, and 20 years.
And we're looking at 7% that we got to hit in order to make it look pretty good.
It's going to be very difficult to hit 7%.
Our guest is State Treasurer Dale Folwell, and when we come back, we'll ask him about some of the other financial issues that he has to deal with regarding North Carolina's future. You're listening to Carolina Newsmakers.
In small towns and big cities around the world, Habitat for Humanity volunteers gather. Hammers are raised, bricks are laid, and another family finds shelter in a home they help build. Habitat volunteers are changing lives for the better, and in the process, maybe even their own as well. Support the work in your community or wherever your heart leads you. Volunteer, get involved, and help build it. Visit us at habitat.org.
We continue with Carolina Newsmakers. Here's Don Curtis.
Welcome back to Carolina Newsmakers. Rick Martinez in for Don Curtis on this edition, which features State Treasurer Dale Folwell. Now, we spent some time talking about the pension plan, the state pension plan, which affects numerous North Carolinians. Another one is the state health plan. Now, what shape are we there on the state health plan? Because frankly, Mr. Treasurer, it's kind of hard to follow in the news media. So since we got the guy here who you're responsible for running it, how are we doing on the state health plan?
Not nearly in as good a shape as we are with the state pension plan. We have a $42 billion liability. Now, wow. I asked my wife, who some of your listeners know, she's an artist and a musician and a docent at Old Salem. So when she does something for you, you can hear it or you can see it. I work on the invisible. I work on the things you can't see and hear until something goes wrong. So I asked Cynthia one time, what do people think when they hear me speak for 60 seconds? Not a question I'd advise your listeners ask their spouses, but and she responded. She says they're probably thinking, "Is he serious? Is he serious about what he just said?" And those that know me know I am extremely serious. And the second I said, "What do they think about for the second 60 seconds?" She said they probably are wondering, how do we got there? That whatever it is that you were serious about, that you were exposing them for the first time, they're saying, how do we get in this situation?
Yeah.
So now I'm going to answer your question with that as a backdrop. Unlike the pension plan, where every month money was coming out of the employee's check and the employer's check, say they work for DOT or the zoo or any other school system, universities, that money was coming out of their check and the employer's check every month, and that money grew, and then over a period of time, then they retired and they had a defined benefit. Well, state employees were eligible for health care after 5 years and 1 day of vesting at a certain period in their life for you, eligible.
Yeah.
But no money was ever set aside for the last 35 years for that eligibility.
Whoa.
So going back to my wife's second question, how do we get here? We got here $42 billion in liability because people were eligible for health care for decades as state employees, but no money every month was ever put aside to pay for that. Now, your listeners should be asking themselves a question like, well, did this just come up all of a sudden? And the answer is no. The city of Winston-Salem realized this 32 years ago and started putting money aside. Then the city of Charlotte saw what the city of Winston-Salem was doing, Raleigh. A lot of other communities and cities and counties have this same obligation, but they started putting money away years ago for this purpose. Now, when you look at this on a per capita basis, it puts us behind Illinois. Illinois, that you just mentioned about the pension plan.
Yeah.
Our $42 billion liability divided by the number of people in the state on a per capita basis put us right behind Illinois. So what does that mean to your listeners? This year, the total amount of spend for the state health plan, just not Medicare or Medicaid, state health plan, is going to exceed the appropriation to the entire university system.
Oh, how much is that?
Over $3 billion.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
So if you look at the pension obligation and the health care obligation, you're starting to see where 25, 26, 28% of the entire state budget is going for these two things that people do not wake up thinking about in the morning. That's why I'm so grateful to be on the show to inform folks. So what are we doing? What we're doing is we're starting with a report that was issued. I won't tell you when till the punchline, but I'm going to read you 3 quick sentences. The state health plan does not have policies and procedures in place to mitigate certain risks that could result in overpayments of member medical claims. The state health plan is at risk for overpaying medical claims. None of these are good words.
Yeah.
Okay, just want to be clear about this.
Yeah.
Because the state health plan has not taken action to prevent the coordination of benefit errors. And lastly, the plan is at risk for overpaying medical claims because the plan auditors do not have access to the network contracts and cannot independently verify that the plan receives proper contractual discounts from its provider network. This report was from 6 years ago from the state auditor of North Carolina.
Was that Beth Wood or was it
Beth
the other,
Wood, and Les Merritt did the exact same report in 2008. So where do we start? It's like an ain't eating a ham biscuit. It's one bite at a time. But the foundation of where we're going to start is these 3 sentences I just mentioned. We need to make sure that we're not paying out money to providers or pharmacies or pharmacists or anybody is on this plan that's not supposed to be on the plan, and they're not supposed to be getting money from the plan, and providers are not billing us for things we're not supposed to be billing us for, number one. We're also doing an enrollment audit, which we just got through most of it 2 days ago, where we're actually asking almost 200,000 dependents on the state health plan to verify that they're supposed to be on there.
Yeah.
And it's a very fussy thing. I'm sorry we're having to do it. The county of Forsyth and Winston-Salem, they do this every year for their state health, for their health plan of Forsyth County. Every year they do an enrollment audit. Now, what's different about this enrollment audit is this is going to be a living, breathing document, so that when you submit the birth certificate of your 10-year-old child to us, that is going to be in our archive, so that when we do an enrollment audit in the future, you'll never have to prove that that child's your child or what age they are. So we will not have to come back in exactly the same way to do this in the future. So that's the state health plan. The other thing that we're doing is that we've just renegotiated our Medicare Advantage rates for 2018. And aside from what your listeners are seeing in the media about premiums going up 20, 25, 30, and 35%, we were able to negotiate on behalf of 155,000 retirees in North Carolina a 0 increase in their Medicare Advantage premiums for 2018.
Wow.
Now, we're very excited about that, but it's even more exciting because we held the premiums steady even after absorbing a health insurance fee that's part of Obamacare that was coming into play this year that would have been an additional $25 a month. So we were able to hold premiums steady after absorbing that fee that did not get sunset up in Congress. And it's a big deal, and it's an example of us taking advantage of our buying power and us signing our contracts on behalf of the participants and the taxpayers of this state, and not us signing someone else's.
Now, to be clear, when you first quoted from the auditor's report that in essence said you didn't have really good oversight of the state health plan, are you instituting everything? And what I'm getting at is you don't need special permission from the General Assembly or anything else. You're just saying, okay, you're going to take this audit report, which is 6 years old, and basically fix the problems, the oversight problems that were on there. And you can do that. You have the power to do that. You don't have to go to anybody else.
That's correct. And the treasurer is the sole fiduciary of the pension plan, which is very unique in the United States, and also sole fiduciary of the state health plan. Now we have very important boards, state health plan boards, pension plan boards, but people want these problems fixed.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you were able to negotiate basically no increase in premiums
for retirees over 65, right?
And do you have some sort of special magic dust, a negotiator, or are you just basically doing the common sense things that I have seen you accomplish when you were in commerce? And it's just basically, you boiled it down. When you asked the folks who were managing our various funds for the pension, answer these 4 questions, and this is going to make life a lot easier, and we're going to save a lot of money. Is that the approach you also took for the health plan?
It is the approach, and it's important every day to always step back and think about who you're standing on the shoulders of. And so when I say these things and when I do these things as treasurer of North Carolina, I'm standing on the shoulders of a lot of people over my lifetime who taught me. And a lot of what I'm talking about and what we're doing, came from my days of being a motorcycle mechanic. When you're a motorcycle mechanic, you listen, you act, and you fix. That's what you do. And, to be a good leader, you've got to be an intentional listener. And we have a lot of great people who have had ideas on how to fix this and how to make this more simple and bring more value to the taxpayers and the participants. But we're now listening to those folks, and we're being very very direct in our messaging. For example, just take something as simple as open enrollment, how you enroll in the state health plan.
Yeah.
Huge issues with that over the last 2 years.
Oh.
I have a stack of letters from one high school in Kings Mountain of people who are obviously very smart individuals who were not able to successfully enroll in the state health plan. I was not able to successfully enroll in the state health plan when I was sworn in as treasurer. And your listeners will have to make a decision if I'm above average intelligence or not. But it shouldn't be that hard.
Yeah.
I mean, we have prison guards out there risking their life, law enforcement officers, a school nurse who may give a child the hug that may make the generational difference in that child's future. We have people who are front and center, nose to nose with the health and well-being of our citizenry. And the last thing they need to be worried about is how hard it's going to be to enroll in the dang state health plan. So I'm pleased to report that this year, last enrollment period, it took 51 clicks to enroll in the state health plan. This year, it's going to be 10.
Great.
Do you smoke? Yes or no? Do you agree to quit line? Yes or no? Choose one of these 2 plans, yes or no, and hit submit. That's it.
Good.
We're trying to make it simple. Law enforcement officers, state employees, when they go out and do their jobs, they shouldn't be leaving work thinking about how difficult these complicated issues are, and we're trying to simplify them. And in open enrollment, for example, we're telling folks that we're starting out with a sentence. We're going from 51 clicks to 10, but it's only going to work if you read the rest of this letter.
Yeah.
Because what people do is they just gloss over things and they don't do it right. And
Not me.
Don't get
No, not me.
Okay, not you.
I read every word.
Yeah. So, but if you give them one page, you make it simple enough. I think it's going to be easy. We're trying to reduce complexity and build value.
All right. We're speaking with North Carolina Treasurer Dale Folwell, and when we come back, so far everything's been pretty good news. Let's see if we can keep the momentum going. You're listening to Carolina Newsmakers.
I can help the next customer over here.
Oh, thank you.
Wow, that's a lot of books. Let's see. How to keep your child safe. Child-proofing your home. Child-proofing your yard. Childproofing your in-laws' home and yard. Well, I'm guessing you have a little one at home?
Yeah.
Well, it looks like you must take good care of her.
Oh, thank you.
Now, let's see. Parent's Guide to Safe Toys. That's a really good one. Parent's Guide to Safe Foods. Parent's Guide to Safe Safety Products. Parent's Guide to Parenting Guides. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and other safety tips.
Of all the things you can read about keeping your child safe, the most important is attached to the back of their car seat. Read the instruction manual and learn to use the latch system. It makes it easier to be sure your child's car seat is installed correctly.
Parent's Guide to Telling Other Parents How to Raise Their Kids.
To learn more, go to safercar.gov. Anchor, tether, latch, the next generation of child safety. A message from the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Ad Council.
When we get old, will you take care of me if I can't get around anymore?
Of course. We'll find a way. Are you going to take care of me if I can't see anymore?
I'll read to you every day.
And if one of us gets Alzheimer's disease, what then?
Call 1-800-437-2423 for a free booklet on caring for your loved ones from Alzheimer's Disease Research. 1-800-437-2423.
Now, once again, with today's Carolina Newsmakers, here's Don Curtis.
Welcome back to Carolina Newsmakers. Rick Martinez in for Don Curtis on this edition. And we're speaking with Treasurer Dale Folwell. We talked about the pension plan, huge, $90 billion plus. The state health plan, that's like 20% of the budget, and all big things. But they affect.
I've got you bumfuzzled about all this billions of dollars. I can see.
Yeah, you sure did. But one thing that kind of affects every person in North Carolina has to do with our bond ratings, because that's kind of like the credit score, so to speak, on the money that the state borrows. How are we doing on our bond rating? Because I know that's very important.
Well, you don't expect this from a motorcycle guy, but I'll give you a quote from a poet.
Okay.
T.S. Eliot, who once said that hell is where nothing connects.
Mm-hmm.
This is not hell. This is North Carolina. So everything that we've talked about in the first two segments connects to this last question. And that is that whether it's your unfunded health care liabilities, how well your pension plan is performing, all this connects to the financial stability of the state of North Carolina.
Yeah.
And then every year, the state treasurer has to go in front of an interview with the three major rating agencies, Standard & Poor's, Fitch's, and Moody's, and explain to them why we deserve a AAA bond rating. Now, it doesn't matter what your politics are, what part of the state you're from, or what gender you are. There's one thing, at least one thing, that people in this state can agree on, that any time that we're able to borrow money at lower interest rates is good for
everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah.
That's at least one thing everybody agrees on. Another thing everybody agrees on is that whatever government we end up with, we want to work. And that's what I do, is I make things work. So how's all this relate to your question? We were just affirmed by rating agencies, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch's, as being a triple. We have a AAA bond rating with all the three rating agencies. We're one of only 12 remaining states that have a AAA bond rating. Now, the way that is, why should your listeners care about that? They should care about it because last week we refinanced $1.2 billion worth of debt. And the result of refinancing that debt, very similar to what people do when they refinance their houses at lower interest rates.
Yeah.
The result of that is a savings of almost $120 million in interest over the remaining life of those bonds. $120 million in interest.
Yeah.
So these are not to be confused with fee reductions with Wall Street money managers. This is simply interest rate savings. So us being able to maintain that AAA bond rating is very important for your listeners, for the taxpayers, and the people of the state. But more importantly, it's important for all the communities. It's very good when you have communities who are also borrowing money that they're a part of a state that has a AAA bond rating. It's also important, I still consider North Carolina to be the number 2 financial center in the United States. It's also important for our major employers in North Carolina in the banking and financial services industry. I think it's important for them to say that they're headquartered in a state that has a triple A bond rating, and it's one of the major responsibilities of the state treasurer. And I will predict that this time next year there will not be as many states with a triple A bond rating.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Currently, there's only 12.
And let's make sure North Carolina is not going to be one of those states that drops out, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Standard & Poor's, I think, or Fitch has actually just recognized our rainy day fund, for example, the strength of our rainy day fund as one of the shining stars of all governmental governance across the United States.
How much money's in the rainy day fund now? Do you know?
It's about 1.8 billion. We're trying to create another bucket for that to spill over into with the General Assembly. That bill's sitting in the Senate, so I'm going to lobby for it while I'm on the air. We call it the Solvency Fund. We want to set up a fund for these unfunded pension and health care liabilities so that when we save money on interest, find savings within our program, that once the rainy day bucket gets completely filled, that money can pour over into the Solvency Fund. The rating agencies are very interested in this because obviously, we're a big military state, and there's a term in the military called II. Now, a lot of people use it, but not a lot of people know what it means. You know that II means that we hear you, we understand you, and we're going to do something about it.
That's right.
And to be able to have this solvency fund, and I hope the Senate will pass it as soon as possible, maybe even tomorrow, that having this solvency fund is a signal to the rating agencies. We hear you. We understand what you're saying about these unfunded liabilities, and we're going to do something about it.
Okay, so let's see. I'd make sure. Well, first of all, when is the rainy day fund full? Because I know Governor McCrory used to say something like about 12% of what your operating budget was and stuff like that. What is the number where the rainy day fund is actually fully stocked, so to speak?
I wish I could answer that. As you know, I don't answer questions I don't know precisely the answer to, because there was something done in the rainy day fund this year to even make it even stronger legislatively, and it's what Standard & Poor's actually opined on. But I don't know the exact answer, but we have one of the strongest, if not the strongest, rainy day fund in the United States. We have one of the strongest unemployment trust fund balances in the United States. Yeah. And now I'm trying to copy that in terms of the solvency fund for the unfunded health care and pension liabilities.
So that's where the money is to hopefully will be toward on all the unfunded liabilities on the health plan,
Sure.
Some of the other things that you were talking about.
Not all of it, but just a portion of it. Well, but then the money we save internally, we'd like for it also go in that bucket.
Now, in February, you issued the debt affordability study. Again, was kind of a wonky-sounding thing that has a lot of impacts on local governments, if I got that right. And tell us about that. And one, what did the debt affordability study say? And then explain how important it is to local cities and towns.
Well, one of the 24 responsibilities the state treasurer has is to be the chair of the Debt Affordability Commission. And the Debt Affordability Commission is a report that's due to the governor and the General Assembly once a year to talk about what the ceiling is, about how much debt they could issue for transportation, capital improvements, and other kinds of projects. For the first time, we have highlighted in North Carolina's debt affordability study these unfunded pension and health care liabilities.
Ooh.
And so that was what was so unique about mine. And I had to do this about 4 weeks after I got sworn in, so it was a fast learning curve.
Yeah.
But the debt affordability study basically, Liz, it puts not an emotional or a political, but a mathematical limit on how much debt the state should be taking on in order to live within its means. So we're very proud of the debt affordability study, and we have something called the Local Government Commission where people have to come before. I'm also the chair of that board, where they have to come to get approval. 1,300 governmental entities have to come before the Local Government Commission before they can issue debt. So, and your listeners, as you said, they don't know what a debt affordability study is, for the most part. But they know what a credit score is. And
amen.
And whether you're talking about a debt affordability study or a AAA bond rating by the rating agencies, it's very similar to an individual's credit score. There's nothing really that complicated about this.
Well, I wanted to, because, you mentioned it, but I think, one of the things I was so impressed with when I came to North Carolina is this local government commission, because, like you said, there's not only cities and towns, but you also have entities like, for example, Raleigh-Durham International Airport is actually a government. And so, rather than, I'll just use Raleigh-Durham as an example. Let's say you get an airport director who thinks he wants to build the Taj Mahal, and all he's going to do is just, issue bonds, and if it's AAA rated or B rated, he doesn't care. He's going to be out of there in 5 years anyway, so might as well go to town. But you can't do that in North Carolina because of the local government commission, right?
ABC boards, the County of Wake, Lincolnton, Lillington, all over 1,300 entities have to come before the local government. The Turnpike Authority came before us yesterday.
Right. Yeah.
Had to come before the local government commission to get their approval, and the local government commission is made up of members that are appointed by the Speaker of the House, Speaker Moore, President Pro Tem Berger. Some are appointed by Governor Cooper, and also we have Elaine Marshall on the local government commission, Auditor Beth Wood,
that's good.
Secretary Penny, who is the
Revenue guy,
Secretary of Revenue. So we have a lot of experience on that board. So and you learn a lot about North Carolina that way.
All right. When we come back, we're going to learn a little bit about this motorcycle mechanic you've been hearing about. When we get a little bit into who Dale Folwell is and just what makes this guy tick. This is a question that many of the best minds of North Carolina have been asking for a long time. You're listening to Carolina Newsmakers. This is Rick Martinez.
Home foreclosure can be a nightmare. A couple of missed house payments, and before you know it, your house is being sold right from underneath you. You don't know where you or your family are going to live, or even where you are going to spend the night. If you don't think it can happen to you or anyone you know, think again. You don't have to face this alone. There is a new government-sponsored program that may help you keep your home. Nonprofit certified counselors from the National Foundation for Credit Counseling are available to work with you and can help you deal with your lender. And this service is completely free. The sooner you call, the better your options. Call 866-687-6322 or visit mortgagehelpnow.org. This nightmare does not have to happen to you. That number again, 866-687-6322. Or visit mortgagehelpnow.org.
The statewide Guardian Ad Litem program provides trained, independent advocates to represent the best interests of abused and neglected children in court proceedings, and they need your help. Donate a few hours each month and be a voice for local children, helping them through the court system to find a safe, nurturing, and permanent home. Rise to the challenge and become a much-needed volunteer. Call 1-800-982-4041 or visit ncgal.org. Volunteer for the Guardian Ad Litem program. Be the voice for a child.
Carolina Newsmakers continues, and once again, here's Don Curtis.
Welcome back to Carolina Newsmakers. Rick Martinez in for Don Curtis. We're talking with Dale Folwell, who is the treasurer of North Carolina. Now, you've been around state government for a long time, but everybody knows no matter how much you are, around a particular job, once you get a job, you find out things that you didn't know about or are surprised and so forth. You've been in the office now for coming up on 8 months. What have you found about being treasurer that has surprised you so far?
What I've found out is that obviously there's a lot of hardworking people at the treasurer's office, that there are 1 out of 10 approximately adult North Carolinians that behind their faith and their family and their personal health, that the next 2 most important things in their life the state treasurer's office has responsibility for, which is the pension and the health care. We do all the things that you've talked about in this show, but at the end of the day, we're in the check delivering business.
Yeah, guess so.
We every 30 days, whether it's unclaimed property, prescription drugs, health care, pension, every 30 days we're paying out over $750 million every 30 days.
Wow.
And so we're in the check delivering business. What I've found is that this word sustainability How are we going to sustain these plans? And in these low interest rate environments is one of the daunting things that puts weight on me. And to some degree, since these things have been so invisible for so long, that except for newsmakers, the people's interest in absorbing what a $40 billion unfunded liability is, and it's so big that why should we even try to solve it? And how's it really going to change my life? But what we're doing at the Treasurer's office, if we are not successful, and I'm not saying this because I am the treasurer, I'm saying this because it didn't matter who the treasurer was. That the treasurer, the 28th treasurer in North Carolina, is going to make a generational difference in the future of our state because of the conservative fiscal management of the General Assembly. We are one of the few states that really has an opportunity to pull ourselves out of these unfunded liabilities. One of the few. No one else has the horsepower to do that. And so that's what I'm finding is just the daunting task of how we're going to sustain this. When interest rates were at 10% and Harlan Bowles was asked to earn 7% in the pension plan, it wasn't too difficult. But interest rates are at 2% and or less.
Yeah, less.
And so it's very difficult.
Okay. You have been state senator, right?
House.
Okay, you're House member. You were part of the McCrory administration. One of the numerous things that you've done is you're a CPA. Is this job as treasurer? Is this the one that is best suited to Dale Folwell, the person, both personally and professionally?
I think so. I think that someone said to me from the other party the other day.
That would be Democrats.
Correct.
Okay.
They said that, and this was a person that is wide and deep in politics in North Carolina for the last many, many decades as anyone there is. And this person said to me, I can't think of one person in political office in this country right now who is better suited to do what they're supposed to be doing than you are.
Are you enjoying it? I know you said that there's a heavy burden, that given what you got to earn 7% to keep having. But are you enjoying it?
I am. I think that God made each of us better at something. None of us are better than anyone else, but possibly better at. And I'm a hoarder intellectually of information.
Yeah.
And I like taking this T.S. Eliot quote, where where nothing connects, and trying to figure out how we can, the bowling pin analogy, how can we, through clarity of thought and hitting things in the right sequence, how can we solve one problem and not solve 7 others at the same time? That's what I had to do when we were retiring the debt at the unemployment agency. But it's important to note, and I said in an earlier segment, that I'm standing on the shoulders of a lot of people, and those people taught me at a very young age to always, when they ask for volunteers for the toughest jobs, to raise your hand. And the best way to get a job is to have a job, and the best way to get the job you want is to be the best at the job you got.
Amen.
Really simple stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
And that you're going to deal with people with integrity, and you're going to see people with integrity, ability, and passion. And they could be a rock star at ability and passion, but if they don't have integrity, sooner or later they're going to get you in trouble.
Yeah.
And I've sort of that and many other things I've sort of applied to my life, and nothing I've ever done is easy. But at the end of the day, it's pretty simple, and I'm just glad to be in this position to to understand that I don't have all the answers. I don't have a monopoly on all the good ideas. But I'm very optimistic that we're going to be able to solve these problems.
Are you still racing motorcycles?
I'm not. I was.
Thank goodness. I'm going to tell you a little story. And everybody kind of knew that Dale has a wide interest. The treasurer has a wide interest. And when
Did you say
were,
wild or wide?
Both. They both. But there was one particular issue that we were working on for Governor McCrory, and we were at the state capitol. There's working offices at the state capitol, and we needed Dale Folwell for this particular problem. Well, like Dale Folwell always does, no problem, I'll get right to there. And he was wearing the craziest racing suit, with the goggles and his hair all messed up, which is always messed up. And it's like, where in the world have you been? And he said, well, I just got back from this race, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And it's like, North Carolina needs a good treasurer better than it needs a motorcycle racer. Or have you finally decided to get off those fool motorcycles? Or are you still messing around with them?
No, I'm my wife. We ride road bike. I ride a Gull Wing, and we ride all the time, every weekend. And I retired from racing 3 years ago. I was the national champion in the GNCC series, and these are 2-hour races that are about 8 or 9 miles through the woods, 30 miles an hour between trees that are 36 inches apart, and I'm out there with a bunch of 18-year-olds and 500 or 600 of them at once, and trying to beat them all, But anyway, we get scored by age group, and I was the Master C champion of the nation in 2013, and I'll be 60 in a year and a half, and would really like to run the 60 class. So,
okay. Well, how many of your fellow CPAs are out there on bikes with you?
I don't know, but I'm more than you probably imagine.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah. The CPAs have a different side to them also. They're not.
They do.
It's not just green pocket protectors. Excuse me, green eye shades and pocket protectors. Not there's anything wrong with that.
What you could be making, given your track record of success. I don't think I'm not telling people anything that they didn't know. You could be making a heck of a lot more money than being treasurer or being a House representative or an assistant secretary at Commerce. So why in the world are you doing this when you could be making a lot of money someplace else in the private sector?
I've never asked myself that question. And when I was working for 50 cents an hour at Cloverdale Shell in Winston-Salem, or delivering newspapers or rolling garbage barrels on a rural garbage route, I really never asked myself that question. I always came back to the way to get a job is to have a job, and the way to get the job you ultimately want is to be the best at the one you have, and just let that drive me to a successful career. I retired from Alex Brown almost 20 years ago. I retired from Alex Brown and Sons, which was the oldest name in investment banking, and so I've spent my time since then really trying to surround myself with creators and givers. I don't have much appetite for takers anymore, and to do things that I enjoy that I'm good at. And somebody compared me the other day, and I don't mean to say this too strongly, but they said, you're sort of like Cam Newton.
That's not a stretch. You're like Cam Newton.
Yes, but the point they were trying to make is he's really good at something, and he enjoys it.
That's true.
I see it. And he said, Dale, you're really good at something, and you really enjoy it. He said, but the difference is between you and Cam Newton is that every time he scores, he gets to spike the ball or do something, and they said, Dale, in your situation, you just have to go and do the next right thing.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's because nobody's really going to notice, and we're very much into a monuments men mentality of the Treasurer's Office, and I really would recommend your listeners watch this movie. It's a true story about people our age, Rick, excuse me.
Yeah, okay.
Who were deputized to go between the Allied forces and the retreating Nazi forces and recover all the great works of art. And George Clooney, I'll make it very quick. There was a down, depressing part in the movie, and I'm paraphrasing George Clooney and saying, guys, one day there will be thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of school kids, tourists, grandparents, and art lovers from around the world who are going to be going to the great museums of the world and witnessing what it is that we're preserving.
Yeah, there you go. That's almost perfect.
And he said, and they're never going to know who did it.
That's right.
And that's not why we're here.
Yeah.
And that's not why I'm at the treasurer's office.
Yeah, and the people who work for you, that's not why they do that.
Right. So for us to preserve and strengthen these plans, we think we're going to be successful at that. We're optimistic. But we understand that preserving and strengthening these plans for the next 50 and 60 years and making a generational difference in North Carolina's future, that no one's ever going to know who did it, and that's not why we're there.
All right, Dale Folwell, Treasurer of the State of North Carolina. Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun, and thank you for taking time and sharing this information with our listeners.
Thank you. You don't even need all those notes.
Amen. All right, Dale Folwell, North Carolina Treasurer, thank you for being with us, and thank you for listening, and join us next week for another edition of Carolina Newsmakers.
Carolina Newsmakers is a production of NCN and is heard each week on a network of North Carolina's leading radio stations. To hear a repeat of this broadcast, go to carolinanewsmakers.com. Carolina Newsmakers is produced by Jason Kong. Network engineer is Alan Sherrill. I'm Scott Fitzgerald, inviting you to join us again next week, same time, for Carolina Newsmakers.